Check. Robert, you go. I went to the crossroads, fell on my knees. I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. I asked the Lord above for mercy. He said, "Paul, God, if you please." Standing at the crossroads, I tried to flag it right. Yeah, standing at the crossroads, baby, I tried to flag it right. Well, ain't nobody see me, know me. Everybody passing me by. Sun going down, boy. Dark gonna catch me killed. Well, dark gonna catch me. I ain't got no loving sweet man now. Oh, to feel my cure. Well, you can run. Tell my friend Paul Willie Brown. Well, you can run. Tell my friend Paul Willie Brown. Then I'm standing at the crossroads, baby. I believe I'm sinking down. I sort of forgot Crossroad Blues there for a minute. That always happens every time I record a new album. I forget stuff because I've been really thinking about new material for a while, so gotta practice a bit from time to time. Well, I think I'll switch gears right away to Sun House, and this is one that will be on the new record. When I recorded Robert Johnson, I knew I was going to have to do some that I had already recorded, because if I wanted to collect his classics on one record, then I was going to have to overlap with some I'd already done in the past. But I did them in a different way. That doesn't mean I did them with an arrangement or anything. I tried to do them the way he did them. But I knew it was going to have a different kind of energy on the All Robert Johnson record, which it did. And the same thing with Sun House. I'm doing this song again, but I did it in a different way on this latest record. Is it okay for me to say the title of the record though?
Sure.
Okay. You know the verse in Robert Johnson's Sun House that will say, got up this morning, saw Blues walking like a man. I said, good morning, Blues. He said, give me your right hand. So the last record was almost called Blues Walking Like a Man. But this one's called Blues Walking Like a Man. The song is called County Farm and Sun House. I think he wrote it. When I say I think so, many times other artists did the same songs. So it's hard to say who did it first. Down south when you do anything that's wrong. Down south when you do anything that's wrong. Down south when you do anything that's wrong. She'll put you down on the county farm. Put you down on her bank on Captain Jack. Put you down on her bank on Captain Jack. Put you down on her bank on Captain Jack. She'll write his name up and down your back. Rob, you can give me a little less vocals. The vocals loud up here. Put you down in a ditch with a great long spade. Put you down in a ditch with a great long spade. Put you down in a ditch with a great long spade. Wish to God you'd never been made. On a Sunday the boys be looking sad. On a Sunday the boys be looking sad. On a Sunday the boys be looking sad. Just to wonder about how much time they had. Thank you. I think I'll be preaching blues because Son House and Robert Johnson did it. Now, I'm not sure really the historical accuracy of this, but as I record these records, I'm listening to so many different artists now over the years that play the same material. And it makes you have to wonder who played it first. And there's really not going to be a whole lot of proof on that. But what there is, obviously, is there was an exchange of songs, licks, notes, styles, and everything came out in a unique way. So, say Willie Brown played Jinx Blues and Future Blues. Son House played Jinx Blues, Walking Blues, and songs that had all the same components as Future Blues, but he had a different title. He may have called it Jinx Blues. Whereas Willie Brown, who played duets with Son House, played the same exact notes, called it Future Blues. They were swapping verses. If you really research it, you begin to realize, like, minutes seem like hours, hours seem like days, sun's gonna shine in my back door someday. You know, everybody's singing the same words, and they're rearranging and reusing the same licks. So you gotta say, well, you know, who did that one first? It's really hard to say. Each one, you almost have to say that the person who recorded it wrote it. You know, when they recorded it, they wrote it. It's almost what, and then sort of, Robert Johnson came later. That's the interesting thing. Son House was playing Walking Blues, Jinx Blues, which is Walking Blues, My Black Mama, Preaching Blues, all these amazing songs. Robert Johnson was younger, so you have to sort of say, maybe Son House wrote Preaching Blues. And then yet, Robert Johnson, when you record a song, you say, written by Robert Johnson, but there was an exchange going on that we'll never really know all the details. Oh my God, I'm forgetting everything. Join the Baptist church. Gonna act like a preacher, show 'em all how to work. Don't someone preach these blues? Don't you know I'm wanting everybody to shout? Hey, don't I want everybody to shout. Gonna do like the first one. Gonna hold my tongue now. So I went in my room, I bowed down, prayed. I bowed down, prayed. Tell the blues good morning, I surely got mine away. Lord, I wish I had now. I had it on my own, had it on my own. Then I get all my man, long, happy home. I love my baby just like I love myself. Darling, just like I love myself. If you can't have me, won't have nobody else. Then there were some songs that Robert Johnson did that I didn't hear anybody else do the same song or version. This one is, of course, a standard blues format, you could say, but Me and the Devil, it's called. So while I was recording the Robert Johnson record, I discovered that Robert Johnson had living relatives, and I didn't know about that until very, very recently, 2003, I think. So a friend of mine called me up and she said, Robert Johnson's grandson wants to speak to you. And here I am thinking that there were no living relatives, that it was just this young man who died. A genius, you know, his flame burned out early, and how tragic and lonely. And then I find out that there's a whole large family. One son, Claude, and 5 grandchildren. So I came to know Stephen Johnson as an absolutely wonderful man, one of the 5 grandchildren. Michael, Stephen, Greg, Teresa, and Johnny May. That's a woman, isn't that a great name? I love that. And we talked a lot about the stigma about blues being the music of the devil. Robert Johnson's image as this guy with horns, you know, this whole thing. And he said, well, you know, he says, that's just Hollywood. He said, my grandfather, he said, never sold a soul to the devil. He said, that's all just Hollywood. He said, my grandfather is a man of God. This is what Stephen Johnson said. You see, he's a preacher. He's a preacher. So he said, listen to the words that my grandfather sang. He said, I went down to the crossroads. I fell down on my knees. I asked the Lord above for mercy. He said, poor Bob, if you please, if I had possession over Judgment Day, I wouldn't have no right to pray. I said, well, you know, I see your point. I said, what do you say to all those people who say, well, Robert Johnson wrote Me and the Devil? He said, that's easy. He said, when you're gifted, when you're talented, when you're on a mission, he said, the devil hates that. Tries to take it away from you. He said, you just might have a hellhound on your trail. Robbie, you can give me a little less guitar as well. When you knocked upon my door, get satisfied. Said I don't see why he would dog me round. Now baby, no, you ain't doing me right. Said I don't see why he would dog me round. Must be that Holy Ghost spirit so deep down in the ground. Down by the highway, sir. No, babe, I don't care where you bury my body when I'm dead and gone. You may bury my body down by the highway side. So my little spirit can't catch a ground bus and run. I teach guitar sometimes these days. I enjoy it more than I ever thought I would in the past. I was not really into teaching so much as I am now. Somewhere along the line it occurred to me that it felt really nice to pass on whatever little blip of information I might have. So one of my students is here tonight. I won't embarrass him. But he'll know when I explain this that this is something that I try to do with my students. I kind of try to urge them to strengthen their own powers of figuring out information, sleuthing out old music, listening. I hand out country blues CDs to my students and I say, go figure this out and bring it in the next day. And in the case of, say, a workshop, perform it for the class. And one of the students who's here probably was put through this very routine. And people say, well, you know, I don't have perfect pitch, I can't figure out what tuning a song is in and that sort of thing. And I said, well, yes you do and yes you can. And there's a really good way to start. If you're trying to listen to an old song, let's say you want to figure it out. This is the advice that I give to students, this sort of advice. I say, first of all, if you're hearing slide, the chances are very good that the person playing is in an open tuning. It's not a guarantee, but it's a very good chance. Even if you don't have a very good sense of pitch or you don't have a perfect ear, you can at least do this, I think. Most people can do this, which is tune your guitar to any open tuning that you can invent that sounds like you're in the same key. Starting point, you know, just first step. So once you have your open tuning, then you listen to high slide notes. Now, from experience, I know a lot of times that the high slide notes are going to be on the 12th fret, which is the octave. So in this case, Robert Johnson was playing this. So I knew that was going to be at the 12th fret, just from experience. So I had to tune my strings up and up and up until I was in the right tuning. Now, I don't mean to be boring here, but here I am going into the workshop mode. The fact is that there was no tuning their guitar to pitch because they weren't using tuning forks. They weren't using tuners. They had no electronic tuners. You just tuned your guitar. You tuned it up to what sounded good to you. So whatever key that person was in, I don't think was as much of a concern as it is to us today. We go, well, that's the key of A, the key of D. Well, they just tuned their guitars a lot of times and played. So if he was above pitch, that was not above pitch then.